could be larger than life, bigger than the world, living out the hopes and dreams of every boy and every girl. You could fly higher than the sky, shine brighter than the stars. You could have all you ever wanted, shoot the moon and reach for Mars. You know you could. Yeah, times are changing everywhere. Do we dream and do we dare? It's up to you, the door is open wide. Feel the rhythm of today, learn the part and join the play. The world is here, let's take it for a ride. You could be larger than life, bigger than the world, living out the hopes and dreams of every boy and every girl. You could fly higher than the sky, shine brighter than the stars. You could have all you ever wanted, shoot the moon and reach for Mars. You know you could. Larger, larger than, bigger, bigger than, living hopes and dreams. Every boy and girl, higher, higher than, brighter, brighter than, all you wanted. You know, you could be larger than life, bigger than the world, living out the hopes and dreams of every boy and every girl. You could fly higher than the sky, shine brighter than the stars. You can have all you ever wanted. Hopes and dreams, every boy. You could fly higher than the sky, shine brighter than the stars. You could have all you ever wanted. You know you could.
Good morning and welcome back to the channel, Grand Colombia, and welcome to another Coffee Time Live coming to you from Armenia, Quindío, Colombia. And my phone should turn the sound down. We'll try to ignore it. Okay, got a bunch of stuff today, but we're going to start off. It's about 76, 77 degrees. Almost 77. We're going to have a high of 82. We're going to have a low of 62. And Colombian peso, 39.16. It's been right around 39, 40, 20, 16, 30 through the week. Let's see if we can get up a little bit more. All right. Today, I got a bunch of extraneous things to talk about, so I'm going to talk about them. But throughout, we're going to go at least the hour. Feel free, if you have anything, any topic that's on your mind, anything in particular, feel free to send it in, and we'll try not to lose it in the shuffle there. Okay, I got notes I can barely read. It seemed good at the time. All right, what do we got? All right, talk a little bit about my week, but before we do that, let's go down through the notes. Very first thing, we've got Juka with his contribution. Thank you very much. And we've got Mr. Anonymous Jerry. Thank you very much. And here we have yet another Jerry. Good morning from Glendale, Arizona. And Jerry says, it looks like I'll retire on May 3rd, which is pretty cool. And then we've got, we'll talk about this a little bit later. If I understand right, I need 3 bank statements of my pension deposit. If that's the case, November, December, we'll talk about that. And where are we? Whoops. Went a little fast. Juka, greetings from Finland. How are you doing? The buck stops here. Ola from Ecuador. I'm glad you're here. We're going to talk a little bit about Ecuador. Not a lot, but a little bit. Just to address some questions I got. Rob, Fort Lauderdale, 481. Damn, that's a big number. You sure it's not going up every week? I don't know. Mr. Ben Lake, good morning from Cray 14. He's my neighbor. He's in the building next door. Guy, how you doing? Good morning from Armenia. You're here now? Okay, I knew you were coming, but I didn't know you were already here. His dudeness abides. Great weather in Buffalo. Yeah, I'll mention that. Well, it'll take about 30 seconds to... it has me very aggravated, actually. Turtle, good morning. Socorro, you haven't moved yet, have you? Coleman, hello from Baguio, Philippines. It's midnight here. Well, I'm glad you stayed up. How long are you going to be there? When you going to get out of that place? Renee, how you doing, Renee? Hi from Brussels. Can watch NFL on German TV, or you could put it on Kodi and get the direct broadcast. Matt Ski, ready for the visa topics, in the process of renewing mine. Yeah, there's been what appears to be a few administrative changes. I'll talk about it when we get to it, which will be very soon. Mr. William, I understand you're back. How you doing? Did you get your car back yet? Somebody ran into him and they took his car off to a repair shop in Pereira. Curious about that. I had a nonstop busy week. I'm glad I've been feeling good. Whatever the medicine is they gave me. No, I haven't made appointments for the doctor yet. You know, I was busy all this week. I mean, finishing up 8:30 at night, getting up at 5 in the morning. It was been a crazy week. Chad, top of the morning from freezing Austin. No, it can't be too cold there. John, good morning. Packing to move from Cerritos to La Villa. It's too hot here. Yeah, there's a lot of places that, and not in your case, but, you know, I tell people it's hot. And they say, I'm going to go there anyway. And I can think of, right off the top of my head, 3 cities that I've said that about, and people went there anyway and then end up bailing because, lo and behold, it's too hot. You don't want to fall in this trap, because what happens is you go on the internet, you look, and you say, well, that doesn't look so bad. And then you go visit, and you're there for a week or two, and it could very well be, it might be the coolest week or two of the year, but you look at it and say, well, it's not bad here. This is really nice. And then you go back and you're there every day, day after day, month after month, and you realize, holy hell, this is hotter. Yeah. So, okay, don't take my word for it. Coleman, back in the USA to go back to work in May. I thought you were retired. Must be nice to have options like that. Okay, what else we get? Ready to leave this U.S. icebox and return home to Colombia? Yeah, you need to get back here. Michael Meyer, good morning from Los Angeles. You not only need to get back here, you need to move back to Armenia. Okay. So, my week. Well, I went to a coffee meeting after missing one, and there were 5 or 6 of us, but a couple people came partway through. I think 6 total. And it was pretty good. But I just want to mention this about the coffee meetings, because I got a message that reminded me of something. And then I met with somebody this week, picked him up at the airport, and I was telling him what I'm about to tell you right now. There was a a question I got, why are you doing coffee meetings now? Because when you lived in Ecuador, you wouldn't do those things. And it's a pretty good question. And I got a pretty good answer. Early on when I was in Ecuador, there's a big expat presence there. And when I went early on, I went to a couple of those things where, those little get-togethers. And I was thoroughly disgusted because the type of people that were there were the exact type of people in this world I can't stand. They were pretentious, they were snobs, they bragged about stuff, it's like they couldn't wait to get into the conversation about how many cars and houses, and I think you know what I'm talking about. They invented the word virtue signaling, and it was always conversations about how much they tipped that poor taxi driver. It was nauseating, and I tried a couple times, and that was it. And I discovered that about half of Cuenca, maybe a little more than half of Cuenca, were people like this. Just, to me, scum of the earth. To you, maybe it's your neighbor. I don't know. But I just can't stand that. Can't you be real? And that's all I could think of when Mark started up this coffee meeting. He wanted me to start it up. I didn't want to. He said, "Why don't you do it?" And he did. And so I went, more out of courtesy to him. Yeah, I'll be there, and the first one, there were like 14, 15 people there. But it wasn't bad. It's a couple people that were there were friends of mine, and so that was all right. So I went to the next one, and the next one turned out to be what it was like since then. 5, 6, 7 people, not too many. But the nice thing is there were real conversations. They talked about real things, and it may be some experience that they had that week, or something that came along that they weren't aware of. And every time I go, I hear some experience or something that I hadn't quite heard before. Maybe there was like a little twist to it or something. And not only is it got good information, especially if you're not here much or you haven't been here very long, there's a ton of good information. Plus you get to, ask a lot of questions of, people there. But we don't just sit there and talk only about Armenia or Colombia. We talk about all kinds of things, and they're nice conversations. And that's why I actually enjoy going, to my shock, because I'm really not a social person. But part of the reason is it's hard for me to keep my mouth shut. So if I'm in a group of assholes, I tend to say that they're assholes. And that doesn't go over very well, and you shouldn't do it. And I'm not proud of that. It's just, it's almost like I've got Tourette's. I just kind of blurt things out sometimes that I probably shouldn't have. So the best thing is don't get yourself in that situation. And I don't like large groups because I get real antsy and feel compelled to run away after 20 minutes of it. It's not fun for me. But these little meetings have been very enjoyable. And it's to my shock and surprise, I actually look forward to them. So that's the difference. That's why. It just got to a point very quickly, well within the first year. It's like, if there were any kind of gringo grouping anywhere, I would actually go out of my way to avoid it. So, and there were places that were nice places, but there were certain times or hours that I would not go to them simply because I figured there'd be some of those people there. I just couldn't stand it. It was so obnoxious. I remember the worst one, the one that really, really got to me was in a restaurant. I was there with a friend. She was helping me do a lot of things, helping me with videos. We're traveling all over the place. There's this guy, and he's sitting there. He's a, retired gringo, and he's sitting there with 2 older ladies, also gringas. And he's sitting there, and to the waitress, he's snapping his fingers and chica, chica. you know, like she's a dog, and she comes over, and then at some point we hear this commotion where he's complaining about her something. I don't even remember the detail, but it wasn't even anything to do with her. But he's like trying to show off in front of these two women he's with, and the owner was actually cooking in the kitchen. He comes out, the guy's making a big scene, and then he starts bragging about all this money he's got. I mean, it was exactly what I can't stand about the type of people that are there. Okay, I'm off on a tangent. We need to stop. Let me go to chat, and then I'm going to get to the visa thing. Whoop, I saw it. Where is it? There we go. William, car is not ready. Whoa, parts were shipped through the Reds, and the Houthis are holding them for ransom. You know, I spent some of my life in collision, automotive, things like that. And it's so funny because you'll see repair shops make up the most creative damn excuses and use things out of the headline. Now, I'm not saying that's not real. It could very well be, but it harkens back to things that I've seen. Mike, good morning. How you doing, Mike? Mr. BB, nice seeing your smiling face again. Will be bad weather for your bills. Yeah, I have a word to say about that. Message retracted. There we go. I mostly take taxis here, but I do like Uber. Oh my God. Don't get me going, because I don't need to have cash, and the Virgin and destination are known prior to getting in the car. Limited need for Spanish. There's no need for Spanish. First of all, you should have cash in your pocket. It's a cash society. And taxis aren't very much. I mean, how much cash do you have to carry if you're gonna run around and go somewhere and come back in a taxi? You're talking $4 or $5, probably, maybe less, that you need to have on hand for a taxi. It's not like it's a big deal. Second of all, Ubers are not legal. Third, you're screwing the taxis. There's a reason why they're young pups that are mostly in the Ubers driving daddy's car. In the taxi, they're always older gentlemen because they work decades to get enough money to buy the medallion and get the car and go into business. You know, it's wholly unfair. Anyway, but I hear you. And as far as destination, if you're talking about here, Mr. Edward Lee, I'm not sure where you are, but if you're talking about here, there's an app, Candio Taxis. Put it on your phone. You can put right in there where you're going, where you're coming from. You can set different waypoints so that you don't have to enter it in each time. Comes up on the driver's phone. He knows exactly where you're going. So you don't have to, you don't have to worry about that. But I'll tell you, the best way to do it, for me, particularly before I could communicate very well with Spanish, or some addresses are really convoluted and it's a mouthful. What I'll do is I'll call it up on a screenshot like Google Maps, and I'll have the address there. I'll screenshot it, and then I'll size it down. I'll clip it down, crop it down to a small size, save that picture. When I get in the taxi, I blow that up, turn the phone sideways. It's huge. He reads it. He's on his way. It's there. There's no problem with that. And then, keep in mind, of course, here it's not an issue, but even where they're allowing it, overtly allowing it, like in Medellin and Bogota, those kinds of crimes tend to happening with Ubers. Not to say it can't happen with a taxi, but the guy that worked decades to get that business isn't likely to put it in jeopardy over, a pickpocket. Okay. Enough of that. Message retracted. I don't mean to scare you away. I'm just I'm just saying, we all have our opinions, and you can do what you want, but just keep in mind, if you're doing it here, because it's not legal, and it happens, it wasn't that long ago, they had right in Central, they had road checks that were stopping cars and motorcycles that were operating for hire, including Ubers, and they were pulling the passengers out. Nothing happens to them. They get to walk away. Taxi or the Uber driver or the motoraton, the motorcycle, they would issue them a citation for a fine, and then they would impound the vehicles. Yeah, if I've traveled a lot, when I'm in a country, I go out of my way to not step on toes and not violate laws. And I certainly don't want to cheat an entire part of the population like the taxi drivers. So it's food to think, just whatever. What do you think about what is happening in Ecuador? I'm going to talk about that. I think most of the violence is Guayaquil. Well, I'll shed some light on that. What do you think will happen to Cuenca or Quito? iDrive is great. Oh, the app. Okay. Yeah, here, because it's specific to Candio Taxi, I use that, and I tend to forget. But there's 3 or 4 apps that are actually available here, and throughout Colombia, there's probably 7 or 8. I don't know. They're there. I just, the Candio app is specific for here, and it's actually a very good app. It shows where the screen comes up. It shows where everybody on the system, where they are on the map. It shows instantly who connected to, Choose You. It has a lot of good information. Of course, it's got the driver and the car information and the license, and it's got his taxi placard number and all of that. And it records it. So if anything were to happen, like if you left, let's say your wallet slipped out of your pocket in the taxi, you can pull that information up, and you can actually message right from there to get your hands on it. Cliff, amazing to watch Uber drivers in El Dorado Airport get towed by the police. Well, it's yeah, I understand even in Medellin where they turn a blind eye. I think it has more to do with the massive size. But I did hear that they're cracking down on them at the airport in Medellin and in Bogota. So just be aware. It's not. See, the problem is people come from the U.S. where Uber's a thing, and they think nothing of it. And it's like, well, it's the app. It's the same thing. It isn't. And I've explained that, but it is true Uber, but it's actually different. And you're not renting the driver, you're renting the car, and so anybody could be driving that car. There's all kinds of problems, but you come here thinking that you're using Uber, and what's wrong with that? I'm a fan of Uber. I've used them. I'm very loyal to Uber. And you come here, it's just different. But, in different cultures, there's a lot of things that are different. And rather than, fight against it, you should kind of go with it. Why are people doing a certain thing? You may not realize at first, but at some point it may dawn on you, and damn, I wish I'd known that sooner. Well, what's going on in Ecuador? The president is applying same rules. So it did again. Yeah, there is some of that going on. Nowhere near as much as he probably should be, but any amount's appreciated. Yeah, this guy inherited a pile of crap. And the last president, he tried half-heartedly, but it all stemmed out of the one before. Okay, visa requirements. We'll talk about that for a little bit. They seem to be adding a few things on, and Mike is going through his process, and he shot a couple things off to me, and I was really surprised. I emailed the visa agent that I use and asked her, and she sent me the requirements. And then I heard somebody else, and Mike got back to me about something. So there's been some confusion going on. I'm going, why? This is all kind of settled in. And then I looked at the form that she had sent me with the requirements, and there are actually some minor changes in that form from like earlier last year. And what I've discovered is there's two things going on. One is there's some administrative changes. See, when the law comes out, it's a framework. And there's a lot of fuzziness, which is why when it first comes out, there's a lot of confusion about what will go, what will pass, what won't. It's just, there's a lot of unknowns that the lawyers or agents, they don't know yet. And so it takes processing a few to kind of get it sorted out, because the specifics aren't generally in the law. There's a certain amount of vagueness, and that's a cultural thing. Try to get a straight answer out of anybody. They tend to talk vague. So there were a few administrative changes, but keep in mind that the person, when this goes to the consulate in Bogota, the person there has a certain amount of power. So let's say, for example, got an itch. Let's say, for example, there's a requirement for 3 years. Well, that was one of the changes. It used to be 5 years for a police report. Now it's 3 years. But let's say there's a requirement for the police report. The person who's reviewing it can look at it, have a question about something, come back to you and say, I need 1 more year. So the requirement may specifically be 3 years, but she can go back, he or she can go back and request, you know what, I need a 4th year. I need to clear something up. They won't tell you why. They'll just say, you need 4 years. Why do I need 4 years? It says 3 years. They have the ability to do that. And you don't know what it is, what it's about. There's no rhyme or reason to it as far as I know. I almost think that they just, just randomly pick people to expand whatever information. They have the power to do it. And as a matter of fact, in the U.S., immigration officers have certain latitude for similar sort of thing. It's not an unusual thing. What is unusual is it seems we're seeing more of that happening right now. I'm not sure why that is. Another thing that throws a wrench in the works is if they're requesting banking information. Now, in the past, they would only request banking information if you had a bank here in Colombia. And even then, it wasn't really necessarily a requirement, but they might tell you, you got to have it, and you just do it. So I'm trying not to look at the chat and get distracted. I'll get to it. Recently, the U.S., I think as of January 1st, they've changed some of the expat banking rules. There's a form. It's called FATCA, FATCA, and the rules of that have changed. And what it does is, let's say a bank here in Colombia, they're doing business with a bank in the United States. They are required to fulfill certain levels of information. And so if they have a U.S. citizen banking there, they're required to obtain certain information from that U.S. citizen, like a social security number or something like that. And they're required to report that back. Some of that change of requirement on other countries from the U.S. is also falling into obtaining a visa. So they could potentially ask you for 3 months, for example, of your bank in the United States, not because they care, but because it's something to do with changes from January 1st coming out of the US. The US affects this process, like when they decided to not allow the US Embassy here any longer to verify your Social Security. We didn't used to have to get it apostilled, but the United States decided with the new regime there that the embassies shouldn't have to do that, so they don't have to do anything. And so now we have to chase after apostilles. Thank you very much. So it's a new requirement. And the truth is, it has nothing to do with Colombia. It has to do with the embassies no longer providing information. Colombia always needed verification, and the embassy would verify it. Well, if the embassy's not doing it, then you got to make it happen, because they won't just accept a printed letter that anybody could print off and create. That you have to have some kind of proof that it's real. So what should be a straightforward process sometimes isn't. Another thing that appears to I have a request in on a couple of these things for clarification. But when I got my original pension visa pre-COVID, I got it for 3 years because it was up to 3 years. And if you applied, there was no reason not to, unless there was something specific. And so I got that. People after COVID were getting 1 year. And then in their second visa, that was when they could get 1, 2, or 3 years, dependent on that person in Bogota. And which I personally think it's kind of unfair, but maybe they figured out that, they could hit people up for a couple years of visas they wouldn't normally have. That's a little cynical. I don't know if that's the case. But now it appears that it's an automatic, that if it's your first visa, it's automatically 1 year. I actually saw that in writing, but I didn't see it on the government site. So I'll verify that. That's what they were handing out anyway, but I didn't know that it was officially that way, and it appears that it is. And it all to do with health insurance. You have your traveler's insurance. Once you get your first visa, then you can get the insurance here, which is open-ended. Then you can get the 3 year. I'm glad I have the resident. In a lot of ways, it was easier than the pension visa. It's just a lot more expensive. It was like twice the price. And then the medical, to shed light on some misinformation. I keep seeing this coming out of Medellin, where they keep saying, yeah, you go for your medical and it's a checkup, but if you were in the military, you also have to go for a psychological. They don't know what they're talking about. Everybody gets the same medical certificate for the same exam. This goes back like a year and a half, where somebody made up a story about, veterans were, high risk or something. It's the same medical certificate. They don't even ask you, it's this is it. So if you're worried about that, oh my God, I was in the military, I got PTSD. It doesn't come up that way, but you do have to get the medical certificate and possibly a blood test. That used to be a requirement. It hasn't been. It's not written in law, but it again amounts to one of those things that somebody in Bogota, it's sad to say, and I ran into this a lot in Ecuador, but sometimes it could even be the mood of those people. Like, let's say they come to work and their boss chews them out and they're aggravated, and on the way there they had all kinds of problems. Maybe somebody stole their cell phone. They sit down, now they're reviewing all these documents, and they just take it out on these anonymous people by requiring they jump through an extra hoop or two. Again, I don't know that that's the case. I do know that happened to me several times in Ecuador. because I saw them face to face. You actually went there. You know, these are all in Bogota. You're not seeing them face to face. So that's as much as I can tell you about what's going on with the visas. It's still a relatively easy process to go through, but if you're getting it, apply some flexibility, because you could turn in everything and they may come back and say, oh, by the way, they're requiring that you take a blood test. So go take a blood test. You know, it takes all of a few minutes and costs next to nothing. You know, and it's done and over with. Okay, so that's on the visa. What else we got? Let me look. Let's see. I spent a weekend at Kalima Lake. Really awesome. Okay. Tommy, how you doing, Tommy? My wife is Queen of Vague. It's built into the Spanish language. Exactly. When she speaks or texts in English, it's still vague. Yeah, it's just, it is a cultural thing for sure. Which reminds me, I had to remind somebody this last week, don't bother asking for directions from a Colombian or a South American for that matter, because they'll give you directions, whether they know it or not. And very often the directions are so vague that even if they know and they're sending you in the right direction, you're probably not going to find it because it was so unspecific. Okay. Let's see, number 3. Okay, this I saw this headline, and this is yet another little pet peeve of mine. It's done in the U.S. all the time. I was just kind of grossed out that they're doing it here as well. Here, take a look at this headline. Is Armenia one of the most favorable cities to live in? Inflation fell in 2023. Okay, well, Armenia is one of the most favorable cities. But the article, which I won't bore you with, but you can go read it if you want, it determined that the Coffee Triangle had the lowest rate of inflation as compared to the rest of Colombia by anywhere from 1% to 2% lower. And that includes Armenia. So, okay, so that's nice. So if inflation was 17%, and now it's 8%, there's still not a whole lot of reason to celebrate because you still have 8% inflation. But you read the article and they're treating it as though, you know, problems basically solved. You should be happy. Every day, as long as it's 8%, the prices are still going up. It's not like the prices are going to go down. And for politics' sake, which they play here also, they make it appear like you should celebrate that your prices are going down. They're not going down. The rate of inflation didn't go away, but the rate went down. So just a little pet peeve of mine. If you're in the U.S., you know what I'm talking about because you hear it all the time. I was just kind of surprised that I heard it here. It's something fairly new here to play those kind of semantics. Okay. So I went to the airport this week, and before I went to the airport, there's nothing in particular about what I'm going to show you. Just, you may find it interesting, maybe you won't. Before you go into the airport or down the road to the airport, you're in this little town where the golf club is, and where that retirement complex that I told you about, things like that. Some nice upscale restaurants. It's a nice area, and you have this supermarket and a whole bunch of little restaurants, kind of like a food court, right there. And there was something new. I was there, I don't know, just a few months ago. It wasn't there, and this is what I saw. I don't know if you recognize those or not, because I'm sure they're a little bit different, but those are electric car charges. You don't see a lot of electric cars in the Andes Mountains because electric vehicles don't do well going up and down mountains. So I was just really surprised. But what you do see here, particularly from Suzuki, you'll see hybrids is not unusual. And Suzuki makes this little hybrid that's actually quite popular. It's pretty inexpensive. And hybrids, I don't know, I think hybrids kind of make sense. But EVs like that, I was just surprised. So I'm going to show you a little clip of this area so you know what I'm talking about. And I know those that haven't been here like to see little scenes of, you know, what you run into day by day. So it's not very long, but it's this little area, kind of like a food court, but it's not. I just noticed Josh Allen, and his message here is go. Don't know who Josh Allen is, but you can put any name in there. But thank you very much. I appreciate it. Who we have here? Oh, okay. So I went into the little supermarket, and I don't know that I'll show you this whole clip, but there was an entire rack of like 5 or 6 shelves of coffees in Candio. And I recognize most of the brands, but some of them were I'd never seen before. My favorite coffee, which is extremely difficult to find in a store, they had that there. I think they had maybe pretty much every coffee of note in Candio. Well, let me just quickly show you. And I was surprised to run across, they have won the top of the food chain international judging. I had a picture, but it was so messed up, it's hard to read. But it's like year after year after year after year, including last year, San Alberto. It's in a purple bag. Let's see. All right, it's above this. Oh, right to the right here, it's actually cacao. Right there, there's 2 purple bags right in the middle there. That's considered to be Colombia's top coffee, and it wins international awards every single year. Now, in these international awards, there's all kinds of categories. So you could technically have out of Colombia like 5 or 6 different winners of #1, depending on their category. And of course, there's that overall category. They have won not only that overall category, but they've won several other awards. They have 2 coffees. One is a geisha, and the other is just your typical Arabica. And you know, so they had 2 #1s based on those, in case you're interested. And let's see. All right, I'll get back to that. Let me voice one of my pet peeves, and we're coming up on Ecuador here in a minute. Here's my pet peeve. What the heck is going on back in the USA? I got this information last night, and I was so thoroughly disgusted. You know, when it comes to football games, the only thing that's supposed to cancel a football game is a lightning storm. That's the way it's always been. But now it seems that whoever is the governor of New York now, oh my God, there's going to be snow. That's dangerous for people to drive in. Where the hell is she from? Steelers Bills playoff game postponed to Monday due to impending winter storm. It's freaking winter. That's what happens. I mean, come on. That's why you put chains on the tires. That's why they plow the roads. I mean, I was something seriously wrong back there. I'm glad I'm here. The lime green taxis are electric. I rode in one last week. Yeah, that's true. I think there's 2 or 3 of them. They're kind of like almost a yellow or a gold with a green tinge. That's what you're talking about, right? I think they're Hyundais. They're pretty nice looking taxis, actually. What's the story with Petro's son? It seems the president doesn't care for him too much. He distanced him. Well, he distanced him because the son ratted on him. His son spilled the beans about the suitcases and the monies and the cartels being involved in buying the votes. So, yeah, I mean, he's not a big fan. But, you know, don't commit the crime. Football has changed. It's all about money. I don't get it. I would think it would be a better draw for viewers during a storm. Wouldn't you prefer to watch them slog it out and, you know, slipping and sliding? And I always thought those were fun. And the crowds get rowdier. You know, you think, at least in Buffalo, people just kind of go crazy with delight. You know, maybe they don't like them throwing the snowballs, but because sometimes there'll be chunks of ice in them, but still. Hey, dude, got my cappuccino. Awesome. In the recent crime just surrounding Medellin and not Armenia, is all the recent crime just surrounding Medellin? No, there's a spike in crime throughout the country. I'm not seeing much here in Armenia, but I think that has a lot to do with whenever it rears its head, there's a massive crackdown. And it seems like whenever a crime is committed, within a day or two, there's a headline where they caught them. They're really active. I will tell you that here in Quindío, there are 2 places that are dangerous. One place, and it's been a long time like this, just full of slimy criminals, is Montenegro. I've never done a video there because the place disgusts me. I just don't like it. It's not even being afraid of the crime, because I could go in the morning, criminals sleep late, you know. I just don't like the place. Why highlight a place that you don't think anybody should go to? But there's a town called Quimbaya, named after the original, at least as far back as anybody knows, inhabitants of Quindío, going back 1,000+ years. So you got Quimbaya, and I've done a few videos there, and it's a nice little town, very traditional. And since last year, crime has been escalating, and they just had an incident with the 2 men on motorcycles, which is a popular Medellin thing. It's also for years popular in Mexico. They not only don't exactly know what the crime is, probably gang on gang, because crime has grown in that city. And there's been a few murders, not so much with innocent people, but against each other. Criminals, you know, tend to go after each other. But what just happened a few days ago is this motorcycle goes by where there's 2 of these guys that apparently they wanted to get rid of, and they didn't shoot them, they threw a bomb. And the bomb killed the 2 guys and blew open the front of a storefront. And the very next day, that night, there was an emergency meeting of that city council. They immediately banned all motorcycles after 6 o'clock with 2 men on it, and all motorcycles after 11. Because that's like the choice transportation for criminals, because, you know, it's easier to get away. And so, you know, so that's their first step. They've also called in the Army. Here, Army can operate within the borders. They've called in the Army, And working in conjunction with police, they're putting up road checks throughout the town. They also, where the crime is coming from is Valle de Cauca, which is west of us. And there's a little criminal, this isn't cartel, it's just like little gangs. It's like, think Bloods and Crips. And they're pretty sure that that's what's been coming, because there's kind of a direct shot. So it's on Cambaya is on the western edge of Quindío. And so they basically, I would almost say blockaded. You could certainly go through, but they're checking every single vehicle that's coming through that direction, going or coming, and they've got blockades in the city. So what I'm trying to say is, we're fortunate here in Quindío is that when anything happens or rears its head, they don't look away. They jump on it. It hasn't always been the case, but I mentioned to you a few, maybe a month or two ago, about this woman who the local people reported her. She was sent there by one of the cartels to be like the staging person, because they were thinking about maybe moving in there. In a matter of a few days, she was arrested and taken out. I mean, they're not tolerating it here at all. And that's good to see. That's what you have to do. You make it difficult for them to do business. And they're certainly doing that. All right. It's not football if the lines don't need to be cleared. Exactly. Thank you. Weren't the Bills fans notorious for attending games in frigid lake effect snowstorm? Well, of course. Absolutely. I used to have season tickets. You never considered not going in the middle of a snowstorm, and you drove there. You just left early. You made sure that you had either studded snow tires or you put chains on. You drove slow. You made sure your washer fluid was filled with real fluids so that it wouldn't try to freeze up. You know, you prepare. You have in their trunk, you got extra blankets, some water, maybe an extra coat, flares. You know, you prepare for this stuff. You don't go, oh my God, it's snowing, we can't have a football game. I just found it disgusting. What is a reasonable rate to pay bilingual locals to assist expats with shopping, translations, and so forth? Well, translation, that's kind of a different thing. It depends on what that is. But I would say is a reasonable rate, if you hire somebody for a day to accompany you here, there, wherever, help you with the bus, taxis, know where to go for things, like a local guide, I would say 100,000 pesos would be good. That would be reasonable. If you're using somebody for translation, then it probably should be more, because if you have somebody that's bilingual and you're doing something like a translation, let's say like a document, then that requires more skills, so you should pay more. If I had somebody like that, or maybe I was taking into the bank with me because I'm doing some specific banking that requires some accuracy, maybe 150,000. And how much is 150,000? $30 to cover your tail. 100,000, we're talking $25. You'll say, well, that's more than, yeah, but it's not a full-time job, first of all. So finding somebody, there's a premium for that. Second of all, when people have their job and you hear about their minimum and all of that, what gets left off is also getting paid for them is money for transportation. Also getting paid for them is their health insurance, their retirement. It's not a contribution, it gets paid for them. So it's money they get plus the benefits. So that's what would be reasonable. And when I'm asked, that's what I tell people. Before COVID, it was 80, which was typical. And where I originally got the information is I asked, I don't remember exactly now, 8 or 10 people, if you were to do such and such, how much would it be to be worth it? and that's what it came out to be. It would be worth it for that. And this was pre-COVID when it was 80. Okay, but would you do it for 60? No, no. Not that they want to walk away from it, but it's not a full-time job. Therefore, they're doing other things. And, you have to weigh what's the value. So it doesn't matter what reason they have. That's where I kind of settled on what I would recommend. And since COVID, it seems that people, it's no problem at 100. So, and it's not that much. So anyway, that's hopefully answered your question. By the way, the only reason I chimed in with health advice regarding sodas was because you mentioned kidney stones, had issues with that. Yeah, but that was like 40 years ago, and usually caused by sugar, soda, and lack of water. I drink lots of water. Yeah, it's no problem. And I appreciate where things are coming from. It's just that people don't really understand. For example, this is what I had for dinner last night. I had an apple that I sliced up into little wedges. I had about 10 red grapes with the seeds, globe grapes, I think they're called. I had about this big a block of blue cheese. That was my dinner. And then I was still a little bit hungry, so I took some in a bowl like a cereal bowl. I cut up some lechuga, some iceberg lettuce. I cut up one tomato. I took one stalk of celery. I chopped that up in little pieces. And I still wanted more blue cheese, so I took the equivalent of about a tablespoon of blue cheese and I crumbled it in there. And I'd homemade some vinegar dressing with some garlic powder, stuff like that, and I put that on it. Not because it's not that I'm dieting. It's just it's the way I tend to eat. Now I'll go out and I'll eat something decadent or whatever, but that's maybe once or twice a month. And once or twice a month, maybe 3 times, I'll have a hamburger. I love hamburgers. Couple times a month, I'll have a steak the ones that I'm buying. They come out of Medellin and they get shipped to me frozen. So, but that's kind of the way I eat day by day is maybe a soup. If I get an order out, one of my favorite things to order, it's a seafood place, and it's this langostino. I'm trying to think of it's just like a soup, but based on shrimp, not fish. I don't drink sodas. Every once in a while, you get a free soda with something that you ordered. They love to throw them away, and they're going to bring it. You can't unclick it, so I always click the Coke Zero or something like that. 9 times out of 10, I'll give them away. Maybe once every 2 months, I'll drink part of it and remember why I don't like sodas. Because I didn't grow up with it, I don't really have a taste for it. I've always eaten the way I'm eating now. And I was never fat before I ended up in the bed and put on all that weight. It wasn't from, gorging myself. It was because I was stuck in bed for 2.5 years. But anyway, so when people give advice, they don't know any of that. And they shouldn't have to know any of that. But they'll make an assumption because, I'm old, I'm fat, it must be those things. But there's a reason why, the blood pressure, the reason it was so high was actually from pain. Apparently, when you have severe pain, your blood pressure can go through the roof. But as soon as that pain was gone, my blood pressure was back to normal. And my last reading was 138/88. And for somebody that's 70 years old, they tell me that's really good. I don't have those kinds of problems that you would typically have if you spent your life eating trash. So, even when I have popcorn, it's usually just plain popcorn. I pop it up, and that's it. Okay, now you can gamble on sports. Oh, that's when it changed. Oh, maybe, I don't know. Turtle and Manizales, they're electric buses running along Santander. They're dark green. My friend has 5 kidney infection, acid reflux, stones, stopped eating. Okay. Yeah, I had them that time, and it, like I say, that was, I don't know how long ago. It was in the 80s, probably 86, 7, something like that. Maybe 85. And the other thing on the acid reflux, I don't have acid reflux the way you would think of it. It's not like I'm having acid reflux. It was something down around my sternum that I never experienced. There was nothing in my throat. There was no burning or anything like that. It was something that there was some kind of obstruction. Well, I don't want to talk about the medical stuff. Yeah. I mean, who wants to hear that crap anyway, right? I'm in so crappy a town. The best coffee I can find is the T1 brand. Oh my God. Oh, yeah. Some of that stuff is rank. There's one, it's something Rojo. You might as well be drinking cat litter. Yeah, you can get some gross coffee here, but not if you're buying real coffee. I think the worst coffee to me is out of Vietnam because they use Robusta because they don't have the right climate and altitude for real coffee. So when people talk about, oh, the Vietnamese coffee, it's unique. Yeah, it is. It's trash that nobody else wants to have. Order your beans online. Yeah, you could do that. Don't have a grinder. You can get a hand grinder in Mercado Libre for about 20, 30,000 pesos delivered. Works good. And if you get green beans, you can actually roast it in a frying pan. If you want to know how, there's a bunch of how-tos on YouTube that'll show you how to roast up your own beans. So you get a hand grinder for $4 or $5 and get some green beans, fry them up, and you're good to go. What do we have here? Come on, there we go. Is Colombia highly reliant on global supply chain, or is it very self-sufficient? In other words, how well can Colombia sustain itself without the rest of the world? That's a great question. And fortunately, Colombia makes just about everything that they need. Now, they import also. But for example, you buy a stove, you have your choice of something comes out of the US, something comes out of Korea, or things that are made right here. There's a brand that was sold in the United States called Haseb, H-A-C-E-B. And you would see it in these small freezers and refrigerators. I always thought it was German for some reason. It's a brand here in Colombia. They make them here and sell them worldwide. They have their own pharmaceutical industry. So they make just about everything. Now, I learned yesterday from someone that says there's one particular medicine, which I don't know what it is. I would like to find out. But one particular medicine they absolutely have been unable to locate here. And that's the first time I've heard that. I've heard a lot of people say that they couldn't find it, but then after digging, we found it. In this particular one, I believe what he's saying. I was just really surprised. But they do make their own medicines. Now you can also get U.S. branded medicines and like that. But what you would call generic, they're actually branded. Colombian has their own brands, and you can get it for a steenth of the price. That's a great diet, man. It's what I eat. You know, I don't live what people assume that I live, which is what cracks me up. Because I get all this well-meaning advice, and actually what they tell me, usually I kind of know it. It just doesn't apply. My own doctor, when she saved me last year, she brought to me on one of her visits back or checkups, she brought me this is what I should be eating morning, noon, and night. And I'm looking at it and I'm laughing and I'm going, that is what I eat. I actually took her out. I showed her my cupboards, my refrigerator. She starts laughing. It's how I eat. Robusta is actually disgusting. So bitter. Exactly. It is. It's really bitter. It does have double the caffeine, but there's a lot of reasons why, but it's very fibrous because it's at lower altitude. When you go to the higher altitude, what happens is the cells of the coffee bean or the seed, they're very compressed, very tight. You know, you look under a microscope, which I've actually seen it, and it's just like it's really squeezed in. When you have Robusta, they're big and they're loose. It's like woody. It would be like pine compared to a hardwood. You know, so, you know, pine is very loose and fibrous, and a hardwood is like tightly compacted. It's kind of like that difference. And so there's a lot of things that affects the flavor, that bitterness. It's really pronounced, the bitterness. Some people like extra bitter. I don't. I actually put a little bit of cacao in my coffee because it actually takes the edge off any kind of bitterness. Mixed with coffee, chocolate is gross. Not to me. As a matter of fact, the one I had this morning, you could barely even tell. I put a half a spoon of the cacao powder in, and then it was actually cappuccino. So steamed milk and 2 shots of espresso. And it took the edge off the bitterness. I probably should have put a little more because it was a little more pronounced than I like. But you could barely taste it. Now, it depends on what chocolate. I mean, if you're putting 2 big spoonfuls of Hershey syrup in or something, you know, maybe you don't like that. But then it would kind of be over sweetened anyway. I'll use Hershey syrup, but I'll use like one teaspoon. I mean, if that's what I have. And recently I ran out of stuff and I put a big spoon of Milo in. Good info. All right. Not sure which, but I'm glad. I buy Colombian coffee at Costco. William, been enjoying the coffee beans from Vertical. Oh, the place over by Parque de la Vida, that restaurant company. Roaster here in Armenia. Okay. Bit of good news. You know, first we had La Nina and really messed up our weather. And then we had El Nino, which has been kind of driving up our temperatures. And for a while we had excessive rain. Well, the good news is El Nino is kind of fallen flat. And while our temperatures are a little above normal from it, there hasn't been anything drastic. But the best news is all the crop expectation, they're all just normal. The amount of production for the crops of various, including coffee and bananas and everything, it's actually been a good year. So that's pretty cool. I do not like too sour coffee. What you're saying, sour, you might actually be referring to the acidity, which can come across as sour. Well, when I get the coffee channel, I'll talk about all that kind of stuff. It's pretty fascinating. It's why I'm excited about doing it, because I just get excited and I'm fascinated by it. And I think last week maybe you could tell, because I was very excited about even a little bit of stuff that I had given out. Now let's talk about Ecuador for a minute. And we've gone over the hour, but that's okay. I was kind of prepared that it might. And I wanted to make sure I opened the door for any questions you had in general. In Ecuador, if you go back and look at some of my videos in Ecuador, at least 6 years ago. I think it was probably 7 years ago. I did a couple of videos talking about crime in Ecuador. Music just came on. I have no idea why. Hold on. I got to turn it off because it's very distracting. I'll be right back. Sorry about that. Okay. 6 or 7 years ago, I did a couple of videos talking about crime because people kept going around talking about how there was no crime, particularly in Cuenca. And I knew for a fact that there was crime. But what goes on in Ecuador is they have an entire division that sole purpose is to promote tourism. And as part of that tourism, they actually have the power of the state is to cover up actual crime. And they would actually go into, like, for example, a newspaper outlet and determine whether they could print that story or not. They have the power to control the press there. It's in the law. And that's what was going on. It was February or March of one year that I knew for a fact that there were 5 murders in gun murders in Cuenca in January and February. Yet nobody knew about it living in Cuenca. And I got called out as a liar and, I'm a hater and all that stuff. Well, I wasn't hating on it. I was just, when people say there's no crime, be aware that there is crime. And I would tell them specifically where this crime was taking place and just don't go there, like near the bus terminal at night. Don't go there. There's a lot of crime that goes on there. And there are other places. So it's real simple to live a nice life there, but you can't hide your head in the sand. You need to know what's going on, where to go and not go. So I did a video talking about the history of the drug trade, Ecuador's involvement. And then I did the next video when they had a bombing in, I'm still drawing a blank, the city on the coast that's northernmost. It's a pretty good sized city. Somebody help me here. I can't think. There was a bombing there, and it turned, first they were saying, well, it's, Colombians drug trade. Well, it was actually Ecuadorians. But then I found out that there were actually Mexicans involved. And that was when I first realized about 7 years ago that the cartels were in Ecuador. And I talked about that because Correa, I knew had basically looked the other way agreements with certain of the gangs. And it kind of blew up in the first prison riot they had, and there were several hundred people involved. Well, now they have thousands of people involved, and it's all gang against gang. So that's the root of it. And the reason it's grown and grown and grown, the reason the cartels have such a hold on Ecuador now is because previously they've looked the other way, taken payoffs. You now have a new president, Noboa, who wants to be, like it was mentioned, he wants to be like the president of El Salvador. He wants to clean it up. He had death threats. There was an assassination in the last election, so he's got a personal stake in it. And he's cracked down. He called martial law, and he's cracked down. They're arresting people left and right. He's not going as far as they did in El Salvador. Personally, I think they should. The problem in Ecuador is that it's so entrenched. This is going to be protracted. Even if they, put their heads down for a while, it's still there, and they're there by tens of thousands. The nearest estimate, there's three main gangs that are basically franchises of the Mexican cartel. There's three main gangs, and it's estimated that they have over 20,000 active members. In a country as small as Ecuador is, with a population that small, that's massive. That would be like talking in the United States, 500,000 people involved in a particularly deadly, ruthless drug gang. So, they got their work cut out for them. There has been crime in Cuenca, but again, it was kind of kept. It was kind of kept away from where you would generally go. So is it going to get any better? I don't think it's going to get better, for some time. It's there, and you're seeing it. It just it's just there was a lot of crime that you weren't seeing, and now it's out in your face. And I'm not saying, get the hell out of there. If you're in Cuenca, and if you make yourself aware instead of putting your head in the sand and denying things, you can be fine. They don't have any. You would just be a distraction to the kind of criminals that these are. They're involved in the drug trade primarily, although I will say, particularly along the coast, there is a ton of extortion going on with businesses. I don't know if you're aware of this or not, and I don't know if it's in Cuenca. It's not like I'm all knowing. And when I say I know for a fact certain things, it's because I was able to talk to people firsthand or find information that would verify certain things. I don't know that in Cuenca they're doing the extortion thing, but I do know that on the coast and in Guayaquil, it's become rampant. So if you own a business, don't be surprised if somebody's coming in and, selling protection that you have to pay every week. It's a serious problem there. So, just be aware, and try to avoid it. For me, it's pretty simple. Colombia is far superior than Ecuador, even if you remove, the crime issue that you're facing now. I love living here. It was okay living there, but it wasn't. It never felt like home, and there were always issues. And here, I wake up every day happy as hell. So, for me, it was a simple decision. Wow, my first house was off Somoran Boulevard. Oh, okay. I'm not sure what that is. I'm probably missing a conversation. Loja is very quiet, like always. Loja, yeah, it's a bit isolated from it, not entirely, but you would certainly not see it. I've spent a lot of time in Loja. I thought about moving there. There's a lot of interesting things there. Esmeraldas, thank you. Esmeraldas, that's what I couldn't remember. That's why it's on my short list for retirement. Let's see, Loja, you need really fluent Spanish. Yeah, that's kind of true. Well, I got by going there, and that was when I was really horrible. But yeah, I'm used to looking like an idiot and pantomiming, and I don't mind. You travel the world, you run into that all the time, you get used to it. But it's very true that it's near impossible to find an English speaker there. Yeah, so, but it's Ecuador. What do you expect? Thanks for all you do for us. Well, you're welcome. I want to thank you guys. That's all I have to say on the Ecuador thing. And the last thing I want to say is I talked to you about, my camera dilemma, and I didn't know what I was going to do for this new coffee series, and it really has to be good. I'm going to be doing a lot of video clips, and I just simply couldn't afford the camera, you know, that I wanted to get, which isn't all that expensive, but for me, it's expensive. I live on this economy. So my cell phone was a number of years old, and it was starting to freeze up. So what I did was I decided to take the money I'd set aside for a camera and put the rest on credit. And I bought myself a refurbished phone. It's an S21 Plus, so it's, what, 2 years old? But the camera is amazing. The camera is stellar. It'll go up to 8K, which I don't do because most platforms, 1080 is about as big as it's going to be anyway. But it just has that capability. It's got a wide lens, which is great because that's what you really need to do. And that camera that I wanted, that was part of the reason. So I solved my cell phone problem. This thing works like a champ. I haven't had a good working cell phone in my hand in a long time. So I've got that, and this will be, and I have a stand for it and everything. This will be my camera for the new series that I'll be doing. Had a nice protracted video call yesterday. We have calls pretty often talking about our plans because there's different people involved in different things, but this is my thing, doing the coffee show. And like I said, I'm really excited about it. I'm happy I got this. Oh, and sound. When you have this, it's kind of difficult if you're videoing, a couple people that are moving around or whatever. So I have this, which was amazingly cheap, Mercado Libre, probably out of China. I actually couldn't find it, and there's nothing marked on here. But this amounted to, I'm doing the conversion, $6. Brand new. There's two. Clip-on lapel. There's two. They're Bluetooth. And then this plugs into the base of your phone. So that is the Bluetooth. And then you clip on lapel, and you got two of them. So I'm holding the phone. I don't need one because I'm right next to the phone speaker. But I can have up to two people involved. So if I've got my lady who is the presenter, and she's talking to a person at the cafe or the owner or whatever, that can take place, and I'm not going to lose the sound. I tried it, and they sound great. So it was dirt cheap. I was shocked because these things, like DJI, they sell these, and it's like $119. I figured, I'll take the chance. I mean, who knows what's going to show up? And what showed up is something really substantial. I mean, they feel solid. They work great. They work seamless. No setups, no apps. It just push the button on, push the button off. Okay, that's all I got. Some good questions today. Let me see if there was a few things here. Okay, so the crime wave is being blown out of proportion. You feel safe in Armenia. What crime wave? The crime wave of Medellin is being blown out of proportion, yet it exists. It's just not as bad. As a matter of fact, every time you read an article about, oh, this foreigner, this, that, and the other thing, and then you read the details, 99 times out of 100, he was being an idiot. He got his date off of Tinder, which you don't do in Medellin because they're all hookers or criminals. Okay, not all. But it is the primary platform for the hookers, which is legal here. Prostitutes are legal. But if you're trying to find like a real date, that you're going to get a prostitute most likely, or a criminal. and it's sprinkled through there normal people. Now here in Armenia, you use Tinder, and they're just real people for the most part. You may find one or two hookers, but they're real people. In much of Colombia, it's that way, but in Medellin, it's not. They realize that for free, they could promote their wares, you know? And so, you know, they get a date off Tinder, and maybe they thought they were going to score because it was going to be two girls, and, you know, he wanders home half drunk at 2 o'clock in the morning with these two girls. I mean, you have to not be stupid. You don't set off fireworks and wave a flag. I'm here, rip me off. And there's way too much of that going on in Medellin. They're inviting it. And then you have the people that aren't inviting it, but they get the spillover because, you know, if you've got hunting grounds that are really good pickings, you're just going to attract more criminals to that. And that's what's taking place there. I don't see anything except a lot of cops and military presence. There are a few bombs north and south. You mean you're talking about in Ecuador? Oh, in Quito, yeah. I don't see anything like mass shootings or other deaths. Right now, no. You pretty much described it. The mass shootings, you're probably over them for a period, and that was mostly Guayaquil. But there's activity throughout the country, like Cuenca and Quito and Esmeralda and a couple of the beach towns in Guayaquil. Growing up in the 90s, I used to go to Rocky's Replay when they actually served beer and food. Okay, you guys still, I don't know what that is. It sounds interesting. 71 Fahrenheit in Cuenca now and 60 in Fort Myers. Sky is all gray and rain. At least not snow. Yeah, it's overcast. And where are we at? Come on. Looks like it's about 78. Sorry, I was trying to take a look and I was had to flip. I've got a whole stack of messages and I'm trying to flip past them to see. I find Pereira safe. Never seen or heard of many problems. Probably because the areas you're in. One of the things I don't like about Pereira is crime, but it's not the crime that we've been talking about. It's more localized. It's more petty, pickpockety. Venezuelans that are unemployed, things like that. It's been that way. 20 years ago, it was like that, and I just didn't like it. But during the day, I'll walk around pretty much anywhere in Pereira, with a few exceptions. At night, I would be, certainly more cautious, but the neighborhood that you're going to live in, it's not really a concern. So I'd be surprised if you ran into, firsthand any kind of a crime there. The coffee region in general is not bad, and probably the most crime of the four cities would be Ibagué. Second would be Pereira. Third would be a toss-up, Manizales or Armenia. They're both pretty tranquilo. Provincial cities in Colombia are like Loja in Ecuador, very quiet, very calm. That's very true. Popayan, ugh. I don't get it. Their claim to fame is everything's white. I just find it tedious, boring, non-creative. That place, I don't know, it depresses me. It's not to say it's not a nice place. I just, we all have our personal things, and that's how it seems. Where we got here? Manizales and Armenia are also on my short list. There are so many great places. Big cities are big cities like everywhere. That's exactly true. Tell me you don't have increasing crime in the U.S. After COVID, it's everywhere. It's the entire world is having an increase in crime. The problem is when you have a situation like Ecuador, where it was ignored. It was ignored for too long. And in the U.S., you're having that in some areas where, criminals get a free pass. I mean, I see clips on YouTube of people raiding stores in groups of 50 people and, stealing, and the security guard just stands there and watches them. I mean, when did that happen? Talk about crazy stuff. And I have to laugh now that I live here for so long in Colombia, and I'll have people from the U.S. and they'll point at Colombia and talk about, what's wrong here. But then I'm watching there, it's like 10 times worse. It's like, come on. All right, a little bit too cold for me. I like Pareda and Armenia. Manizales? Nah, it's not cold. It's only like it's only like a degree or two more there than it is here. Cali in Colombia, for those who like summer like temps every day. It's a little more than summer like, unless you're talking about the dog days of summer where it's hot as hell and you don't want to go out and you need to stay in the shade. That's Cali for me. Okay, I might be exaggerating a little, but it has more than its share of days like that. It has more days like that than it doesn't. Let's put it that way. I do like Manizales, and those hilly streets give you lots of exercise. Or if you don't want to walk the hilly streets, you don't have to. I keep telling everybody, live on 23. You can walk a total of about 8 miles going and coming back along 23. Everything you could possibly want in the world exists somewhere on 23, including like 3 main malls. Everything is there, and you don't have to climb a hill. Ellsberg, I heard that, Libby, but compared to Colorado, it's balmy. Yeah. I'm in a small town where the only crime committed most recently was my cat ate the neighbor's parrot. Well, in the north of Armenia, which is almost like its own territory, nothing happens here. I mean, it's a shock if you hear even a cell phone got taken. Bogota and Tunia are cold. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, you got some, Andes Mountains. You get up in some of the mountains, it's cold. In Bogota, I remember one time I was there and I had to go to a mall to get something. It was across town. This was a long time ago. And I only had a light jacket, and it was windy and it was freaking cold. I'm from upstate New York. It was bitter cold. It was awful. I couldn't wait to get what I had to do and get back and have it done. And I had to do a fair amount of walking through part of it out in the cold and the wind, and it was miserable. It was just one more reason I'm not a fan of Bogota. I don't like big cities anyway. I don't like all the traffic. Even here, particularly in the afternoons, the traffic is getting bad. But I had somebody here the other day. He said, "Well, you said the traffic's bad here, but it's nothing like Medellin." Well, no, that's ridiculous traffic. But for me, it's bad. And in the afternoon, it can get, you can take a 15-minute trip and turn into a half an hour. For some people who are used to heavy traffic, they laugh and think that's nothing. Yeah, but I don't like that. I see cats and dogs walking around all the time, not paying attention to one another. That's normal. I have to say, lately I've seen maybe 10 unleashed dogs walking around. However, they're in areas where I think it's like their owners are right there and they just let them go because they know the area. But something you'll see, and I saw this in Ecuador too, except for the street dogs. And there you got to watch out. They'll bite you, they get in the garbage. But here, we don't really have that kind. If there's a street dog, people take it in right away. So if you see a dog on the street, there's probably an owner like right inside the doorway or something. But the dogs, I just was telling somebody, the person I spent this week with, you know, we're talking about the dogs, and they're calm, they're peaceful, they're tranquil, they don't bother anybody. I've never heard of a dog bite. I'm sure it happens sometime somewhere, but you don't see it, you don't hear it, and it's generally they're leashed. And this, you know, in the U.S. it's popular. Every once in a while you see a dog carrying his own leash. Oh, isn't that cute? Here it's like dogs are born with that ability. You constantly see dogs carrying their own leash, walking next to their owner. And it's not like they go through all these dog obedient classes. And I wonder how that is. There's something to be said for that. That culturally, the people that are just everyday, so calm, cool, collected, they don't get riled up, and they're just really peaceful, calm people. That the dogs seem to inherit that same characteristic. In the U.S., we're frantic. We're always going. It's stress. You know, it's like we're more, we demonstrate ourselves a lot more. And I think maybe that puts dogs on edge, makes them nervous, and affects them. I mean, I don't know. I'm just shooting from the hip here, but your observation is absolutely right. And I don't know why. That's what I think. No more dog food in Korean restaurants. You know, but in China, it ended in Korea some time ago for the most part. But in China, it's rampant. I mean, there's dog butchers, but they do put up an effort to kind of disguise it, but it's definitely there. I noticed a lot of noise in Mexico. Seems to be part of the culture. I think you mentioned it bothered you in Cuenca. Well, I mentioned it was there. How is it in Armenia? I don't like noise either. Well, the thing with the noise is it depends on where you are. If you're living here and you don't want noise, then live in a place where there's not a lot of noise. If you want to be, there's a nice condos right down in the nice part of Central. If you want to be there, then expect that you're going to be hearing parties and people, you know, carrying on like that. If you say you like this high rise and it's right across the street from one of the big malls and it's a popular area, then you're going to hear all kinds of traffic noises and people, and you're going to get that. But maybe you get a place on the back side of that building and it's nice and quiet. My first building here this time around was Provenza. A lot of you probably remember that place. It was one block from Bolivar, and it was right directly behind Mokawa. But I had an apartment on the back side. It was quiet. It was peaceful. On the front side, noisy as hell. It's a busy street. When I lived in Trecentesima, 360, behind the mall, the place that I loved, it was very quiet because I was overlooking all that green space, and the nearest road was quite a ways away. I was on the back side of all that highway traffic. When I lived in the house, I was the furthest back, facing the trees. The highway was, I don't know, like 10 houses the other way. So you have to choose places like that. This place, I'm right on the highway. I hear all the noise, but I'm 13 floors up, and the way the angle is, during the day, it's kind of noisy, but I keep my balcony doors are open, both of them. My window right here, it's open. You know, I like to have that breeze go through, and that's more important to me than the road noise. I don't really care. I'm kind of oblivious, and at night it tones down, at least for me. Now, the neighbor guy lives in the building next to me. He's a little lower down. He one of the reasons he's wanting to move right now, because for him it's really noisy. and here I am. It's like right next to him, but apparently there's enough of a difference. Now I'll be moving from here too, but honestly, it's not because of the noise. I just want to go. There's another place that I want to move to. So, John, last week they had a party with noise all night long. I couldn't stand it. Called the cops. Oh, yeah, that they came and told them to stop. Really? They would get a ticket for everyone there. It was 6 a.m. Well, that surprises me. Where was that? Usually, I mean, it's just kind of part of it. Particularly this time of year, you know, you just have endless parties. They should be drying up. I think this, excuse me, I think this weekend things go back to normal. It was worse. Oh, okay. It was worse. Part of living here is the parties, and what you have to do is just make sure that you choose a place where you don't have to worry about those things. And that usually doesn't come in when you go there, you get a place, you got a year's lease. You probably didn't make the best choice, but you'll know for the next time, and then you make sure that you use a good decision. So your first year, you know, be prepared to choose something that you might regret a little bit, but it still has all the things that you liked about it that got it for the first place. So, you know, try to be patient. Try not to let it drive you crazy. If you're having trouble sleeping at night, get those soft earplugs, the ones that don't hurt your ear. You know, it's like not the best of solutions, but you know, make it work for you. It's because it's like that in a particular place doesn't mean it's like that everywhere. Like William lives in a place where it's very quiet. He lives in that entire neighborhood is a quiet neighborhood. You know, you make choices like that. The fiestas, right? Yeah, yeah. How they're so rude. How do we put up with them? Okay, we ran an hour and 40 minutes. That's the longest in a long time. But I was up for it. And the Bills can't play till tomorrow anyway. A lot of great questions. Nice contributions. Thank you. I appreciate it. You guys are what keep this channel going. I say that all the time, and I say it because it's true. One of the side benefits of this new channel with the coffee is that will be a commercial operation. I will be doing things to actually directly earn money from that with a sponsorship or whatever. I still can't be monetized, but this I never intended to make money from. I just needed to take care of itself. And we've been coming pretty close. Christmas helped. That helped a lot. I've been running a little behind the 8 ball, but in general, I'm pretty close. But once I get this coffee thing going and that actually starts generating something, I'll be able to take the pressure off of this channel because I'll be able to use that in the category of it's not my pay. And so I won't be so dependent. I appreciate so much that you guys keep this going because what would I do? You know? But you know, hopefully take the pressure off because it kind of sucks. You know, I need a video card, or I've got to replace the camera, or I've got memory cards that they don't last long. It's amazing when you're doing high definition videos how short-lived some things are. And with cameras, you know, there's actually a period of time that's built right into them, how long they're going to last. It's like a diesel that has a timer on the engine, you know. All of those things, it's like people say, well, why does it cost you anything? Well, you know, you got software and updates, and you've got certain subscriptions that you need to do. You've got different types of hardware. And if you think back, before you guys started contributing, back when I was just trying to do it all out of my own pocket, the sound was horrible. The video wasn't very clear. I mean, it was a very different thing. And it's hard to be watchable when the poor sound quality is all you can think about. Now you don't have to think about it because I got pretty reasonable sound quality. I don't have a top of the line mic, but I've got a nice one. It wasn't very expensive, but I could afford it. And I think it was like $40 or something like that. But it was the contributions that pay for that. So all the things, part of this was, from contributions, so that I can have a camera to continue, because it kind of sucked. So it adds up. It works out to about $400 a month. I haven't figured it out recently, so with inflation and everything, it's probably more up to about $450. I receive usually somewhere near $400 by the time the month is over. And so, kudos to you guys. I remember when you did on a laptop in a balcony. Yeah, me too. Wasn't so long ago. And the problem with that, and I like that actually, but laptops have a very short lifespan when you're doing video work on them. That's why I had to get this desktop, because I ate up over 4 years 3 laptops, and these things, they're damn expensive because you have to have a high quality one to run editing and all the things. They can't be middle of the road, and it's expensive. Well, now the desktop, it doesn't just die like those, but you have components that you have to upgrade or repair. So anyway, that's what it works out to. It's not horribly expensive, but it amounts to a good portion of what I earn through a pension. I can't afford it. You guys make it affordable. We come pretty close most of the time. Sometimes no, but as long as we're in the ballpark. But with this coffee thing, I'm hoping it takes the pressure off me, so that I can quit worrying about what I'm going to have to fork over. What gap do I have in what I got and what I got to do? But anyway, that's the story on that. Sorry if I bored you. I get asked that quite a bit. Why do you say there's expensive? Because there is. There wasn't my first year, but they really sucked. They really sucked. All right, so we're going to end it here. There we go. Thank you all. I appreciate it. I will be back next week. I should be doing some of those cafe clips in the next 2 weeks. I'm hoping to have my first coffee video out, which will be more of a trial and error. It won't be like a finished product. Don't expect that till beginning of March. But in February, I hope to have some trial runs that are presentable by the first part of February. And fingers crossed. All right, that's it. See you next week. Thank you and ciao.
Bye.